So Sudhir Bhave sir will be talking about cyber psychiatric disorder prevention. As we all know that cyber psychiatric disorder, the management is almost similar or with some differences compared to other internet addiction related disorders. But today, sir will be talking about the prevention of cyber psychiatric disorder. Secondly, we all use, as psychiatrists, we all use media just like other people or the other fraternities. But the implications of media use by psychiatrists are different than what others use, especially the social media. The way we use social media, whether what we post, what we comment. Secondly, how we manage our websites or the web pages, how we manage our social media accounts like Facebook or the Instagram. These all have certain implications, social or some other implications. For example, if any patient or their relatives follow us on Instagram, or if they send us a friend request on Facebook, we have to accept it. Such kind of tricky things are there which happen to everyone. And it's difficult to how we respond at that particular point of time. So there has to be certain guidelines, and Indian Psychiatric Society is coming up with the clinical practice guideline on this topic, how to use media or the media and mental well-being. And Dr. Shahul Amin sir is a key author for these particular guidelines. Also, he is doing tremendous work on media and psychiatry in his region. So I'm sure all of us will have a great piece of knowledge today. And for this, we have our motivating force. We are always motivating force, Dr. Nagapurkar sir, the president of Indian Psychiatric Society very soon, and Dr. Dhananjay Ashturkar sir, honorary secretary. We just give some idea to Nagapurkar sir, and he just say yes with some inputs. Thank you so much, sir. And I request Dr. Nagapurkar sir to say a few words before we start the session.
Yeah,
Nagapurkar sir.
Thank you, Abhijit. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Abhijit. This is a wonderful topic, and I hope everyone will enjoy this feast, entertaining feast tonight. And we have a very great speakers like Dr. Bhave and Dr. Shahul, and two senior psychiatrists, Dr. Burmale and Dr. Prasad, as chairpersons. And I think this is going to be a wonderful program. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for always empowering and encouraging all of us. Now, I would like to introduce our eminent chairpersons for the session, Dr. Nandu Mulmule, sir, who is a senior psychiatrist from Nanded, and Dr. BSV Prasad, sir, a senior psychiatrist from Nasik. So, I would request the chairpersons to take over and introduce the speaker for the session. Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Audible and visible.
Audible and visible. Okay. The first speaker, Dr. Sudhir Bhave. आता हे घासून गुळगुळीत झालेलं वाक्य आहे that he does not need introduction. But I feel few words are necessary because I think he is the most apt person to talk on media and psychiatry because he has co-authored, co-edited a book on cyber psychiatry, first of its kind in psychiatry. Second thing, he is connected with media in the sense that he is a renowned light music singer, Sugam Sangeet ज्याला आपण म्हणतो, and he has cut his own album. So that way he knows the nuances of media and the connections it has with psychiatric problems. And I congratulate the team for bringing upon this burning topic on media and psychiatry because it is the most newest, I think, problem in psychiatry, which still needs to be defined about its encroachment on the human mind. Dr. Sudhir Bhave is a professor at NKP Salve Institute in Nagpur. He has almost 29, 30 publications to his credit. He has already bagged the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Bombay Psychiatric Society. But more important than that, I feel that he is an authority on cyber psychiatry as well as media and psychiatry because of his great contribution as of the book. So I request now Dr. Sudhir Bhave to enlighten us on this topic.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Mulumle, sir. I think I start sharing my screen. Yeah, is that visible?
Yes, sir.
Visible.
Okay. First of all, huge thanks to IPS West Zone, Dr. Nagapurkar, Dr. Abhijit Pai, and the respected chairpersons for the nice words, the kind words they've said about me. I remember about 3-4 years back, we had invited Dr. Salman Akhtar, the very eminent Dr. Salman Akhtar, Javed Akhtar's younger brother and psychoanalyst who is in USA, a brilliant person, to give a talk to the West Zone on money and psychiatry. So when I introduced Dr. Salman Akhtar, I said that he has such a fantastic lineage. He's the brother of Javed Akhtar. He's the son of Jani Akhtar, who has written songs like आंखों ही आंखों में इशारा हो गया, ए दिले नादान, ये दिल और उनकी निगाहों के साए, and so on. And when I finished the introduction, Dr. Salman Akhtar said that now I'm in a dilemma. Am I expected to sing or am I expected to give a lecture? So when Dr. Nagapurkar said that we are going to have entertaining session, I'm facing the same dilemma. Am I supposed to entertain or give a lecture? I'm saying that because this topic, prevention of cyber psychiatric disorders, is a far from entertaining topic and could be dragged. So I'm using a disclaimer at the very beginning, because it outlines some of the things that so many people in the community can do to prevent cyber psychiatric disorders. I was discussing with Dr. Abhijit Pai about what topic to speak on, and he suggested the management of cyber psychiatric disorders. Now, that's a wonderful topic, but the only difficulty is that cyber psychiatric disorders, they encompass a very large number of disorders, right? From all kinds of addictions on the internet, porn addiction and shopping addiction and gaming addiction and so on. Screen addiction, etc. And then at the other end, we have cyberchondria, cyberbullying, revenge porn, and so many things. So I think covering the management of all of these in one talk is almost impossible. So I thought that maybe discussing prevention could be easy, because the principles of prevention of cyber psychiatric problems, they can apply across an entire spectrum of cyber psychiatric disorders. And I have labeled this as principles because I think we need to understand as to what are the main objectives behind prevention of these problems and what are the steps at large that can be. Now, coming to the topic, today I'm going to talk on basically 3 themes. One is what are the target groups that we need to address in this kind of prevention. Now, whenever we need to prevent something in a given individual, it's understandable that the individual needs to develop certain skills. Like if I am to get out of screen, or if I'm not to get into screen addiction, then I need to know XYZ skills. So what are these skills exactly? And thirdly, what are the program characteristics? I mean, if at various levels we do use the preventative programs, what are the characteristics of these programs? So firstly, coming to the target groups. The first and foremost, children and adolescents. I think it's quite understandable because that's the age group when children are most vulnerable for addiction. We know that in children, it's a growing brain, developing synaptic connections, and any input from the environment, which includes a screen, can hardwire the brain for continued maladaptive responses. And secondly, for the reason that children and adolescents are in a kind of malleable stage. They are at a stage when major changes can be aimed at and brought about in the personality functioning in the way the child or adolescent functions. And naturally, elementary school level is perhaps the stage when we start introducing these preventive measures. Because we know that children, very young children, also have screens in their hands. So the earlier you catch them, the better it is. Secondly, college students. Again, because if we take these groups as a whole, college students have perhaps the highest prevalence rates of internet-related disorders. I mean, you take all kinds of disorders, all kinds of addictions and things like cyberbullying and I mean, many more. I mean, they are most common in the age group of, say, something like 16 years to 22, 23 years. Parents and significant adults, because they are the ones who are going to mold the putti, who can really bring about a change. And lastly, employees of certain companies which are day in and day out involved in creation of the games, which could be addictive, and employees of people who are attached to the internet for a large number of hours per day. So that, I mean, if we attack these target these four groups, then we have kind of comprehensively attempted to aim at prevention. There is something called selective prevention. Selective prevention is for high-risk individuals. It's not prevention of the community at large, but only high-risk individuals. It can also be called preemptive. You know that in science, preemption is preventing something in a targeted group. And I pick up a high-risk group, and what kind of high-risk group? Which are the kind of people who are more likely to get into cyber psychiatric disorders? People with comorbid psychiatric illnesses. It's a well-known fact that people with pre-existing psychiatric illnesses, they are more likely to develop cyber psychiatric problems. And I won't go into details of all of these, but I think suffice it to say that psychiatric problems like ADHD, depressive and anxiety disorders, social phobia, substance abuse, obsessive compulsive symptoms, etc. Now, these are the kind of patients who are more likely to develop the problem. Now, in each of these illnesses, there are specific reasons as to why, say, a patient of OCD more likely to develop internet addiction, or why a patient with social phobia is more likely to develop social media addiction, and so on. I won't go into details of all those. And second is naturally personality characteristics. Now, whenever we talk of any cyber psychiatric problem, I think there are multiple areas which can contribute to the problem. And one very major area is the personality. I mean, it's common sense that if the personality is basically healthy, the possibility of developing a cyber psychiatric illness is small. I mean, you can see that people with high impulsivity, high novelty-seeking behavior, low reward introversion, etc., etc. I mean, these are the kind of people with personality issues who are more likely to get addicted. Thirdly, the people showing particular patterns of internet use, like people who are on the internet for a long time, people who indulge in various kinds of apps or video games, people who indulge into internet use. I'm sure all of us know many people who claim very proudly that they do binge watching. I mean, I have a few juniors who very proudly tell me on Monday कि sir मैंने binge watching किया, मैंने Saturday और Sunday को 10 episode देख लिए इस चीज के. Now we know, I mean, that's not a very adaptive behavior. And lastly, people facing situations which are difficult, which can propel a person towards internet-related difficulties. People who are feeling lonely, under stress, people with low levels of social acceptance, and so on. So, targeted intervention can be done for these four sources. Now, when I'm saying all this, I think you have to keep in mind that day in and day out, we keep on meeting people who have these kind of difficulties. Like if we talk of the different psychiatric diagnoses, I mean, that's our bread and butter. I mean, every day we see patients of depression, of anxiety, of social phobia, OCD, and so on. And I think we must keep in mind that he is the kind of person in whom probably we need to pay attention when it comes to internet-related difficulties. Because internet is ubiquitous, universal, it is used extremely commonly, and while history taking, we need to go into fact also the history of the internet use. So that was the first thing, the target groups. The second is improvement of specific skills. If I am to prevent a cybersecurity problem, what are the skills I need to inculcate in a person belonging to a particular target population? Firstly, skills in individuals at risk of internet addiction. So, what are the skills that I need to inculcate in these people? One is skills associated with internet use itself, like self-control. I think we need to teach all adolescents, all young people about how to go on exercising self-control, abstinence from addictive online applications. Applications can be very addictive. And looking at the humongously large number of applications which serve all kinds of needs and desires, there's a very high likelihood that each person in the society can find multiple apps which he or she can get hooked to. Ability to identify and correct the maladaptive thoughts connected with addictive behavior. Now, I'm sure that everybody in the audience has some idea about the CBT for internet addiction, or rather any addiction. Talk of substance use addiction, talk of internet addiction, the kind of maladaptive cognitions that is ubiquitous across the whole spectrum. So thoughts like, I just cannot do without it. If I don't have my cell phone in my hand for so many hours, I just can't function. Or I'll start having withdrawal from not using the internet, and so on. So all these we know are not the right cognitions, and that needs to be addressed before the problem begins. Then secondly, skills associated with coping with stress and emotions. As I mentioned, alluded to earlier, people in stressful situations, people with emotional difficulties, they are more likely to internet addiction and related cybersecurity problems. So I think it goes without saying that we need to target these kind of emotional difficulties so that the person does not want to have cybersecurity disorders. So things like development of coping strategies. If a person is stressed because of something, then how to basically cope with the stress. Now, when I say this, I fully realize that we are talking about a very large number of people who come to us. Almost anybody who comes to us is a person who is facing stress. And if you look at it that way, then perhaps every single patient that we see, maybe except patients with psychotic illness, bipolar disorder, they are the ones who are likely to get hooked onto the internet. Then diminution of hostility. So basically, anger control, how to manage your own hostility, enhancement of self-esteem. It has been proven time and again that low self-esteem can push a person towards more use of the internet. People with a low self-esteem, they want approval, so they might do undesirable things on the internet, indulge in sexual behaviors on the internet to gain approval of the person who is watching it, and so on. So basically, improvement of self-esteem is one target area. Then thirdly, skills associated with interpersonal situations. Because interpersonal difficulties can lead to emotional difficulties, which can give rise to cybersecurity problems. So diminution of interpersonal sensitivity. So that, if you look at our own friend circle, we would have friends who are oversensitive to remarks on the social media, have all kinds of remarks flying around, and some of our friends, they take it very badly, they overreact, they get very angry, and that can lead to more difficulties. So basically, handling sensitivity, reinforcing the rules of fairness and tolerance. I think this is something that many of us have been doing in schools, like acceptance of the other gender, avoiding prejudice, being fair to the opposite sex, being fair to all kinds of social and so on. More ability to communicate face. I mean, there are so many children and adolescents who lack the ability to be socially effective, to be able to communicate well socially. So that's a skill that needs to be taught. For children who are not socially very capable or maybe have social anxiety, they are the ones who are more likely to have maladaptive use of social media. Fourthly, it's associated with daily regime and use of. So now these skills, these are keeping a sleep schedule on a regular basis, carrying out group activities so that you are more engaged in those kind of adaptive activities that take to the screens, participation in creative and stimulating healthy activities, and so on. Now, that was about the target group. Then secondly, what are the things that we need to recommend to the parents of children at risk? I think some of you might have seen the recommendations for screen use that IPS had come out with in 2019 before the COVID era began. And I had the privilege of authoring those recommendations. And those recommendations are all about what the parents need to do with infants, with toddlers, with children, with adolescents, and what does an adult need to do with himself or herself so that they can save themselves from the deleterious effects of it. So now, what do you do with parents of children at risk? What do you tell them? Now, these are the kind of areas that most psychiatrists are familiar with, and at least partly we keep on doing these things very frequently nowadays. So, skills encouraging closer relationships. I think it's understandable that parents who are closer to their children, who communicate more frequently, who communicate in a more positive way, are likely to have families where children use the screens less commonly because they have a parent figure with whom they can communicate more freely, with more feeling of security, more openly. So basically, improvement in parent-child communication, regulating the amount of time spent with the children. We all encourage parents to be with children more often, spend more time with them, and so on. Understanding the child's needs. Like it has been suggested that social media for children is seen as bad universally, and the use of social media is targeted. But there are many authorities who say that social media is not the culprit, but the background factors like the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of boredom, the feeling of a parent who is not communicating adequately. These are the background reasons for why children and adolescents they take to the screens. So basically understanding the need of a child and what is it that the child needs from me, what is it that I can give the child, I think that can go a long way in preventing the child from using the screens excessively. And of course, improvement of the parental mental health. Because it has been shown that parents with psychological difficulties, parents who are a part of broken families, so they are the ones who have children more commonly having screen-related problems. So basically tackling the mental health needs of parents. Then secondly, parents need to be taught about skills in monitoring of the internet use. So understanding the child's needs regarding the internet use. In the COVID era, when the classrooms were all online and the children were not allowed to go to the schools were not open simply. So at that time, I mean, we used to have very large number of parents complaining that Dr. Heeb keeps on looking at the screen for 5 hours a day, 4 hours a day. And when we talk to the child tells us, sir, the classes themselves go on the screen for 2 hours or 3 hours. Then we have to do some homework on the screen. So I think before the parents feel alarmed and start complaining to mental health professionals about excessive screen use, then I think important that before that, they should understand the child's needs when it comes to use of the screen. I mean, is the child using the screen for some entertaining, potentially addictive activity, or is it for something which is useful? Establishing rules regarding online activity. All parents need to be told about the kind of rules that they should try to implement in the family. And I think this is done fairly common in our practice. Like we tell the parents that the child should not see the screen for more than, say, 1 hour or more than 2 hours per day. Look out for the content. When the small child is seeing the screen, sit with the child, supervise the screen time, see what are the kind of apps the child is using, and so on. So that was about talking to parents. And now this we know, talking to parents is largely done either in the community setting, you go to clubs, Rotary, Lions Club, or then you talk in the parent meeting in schools and those kind of places. But then second area where the groups can be targeted is the employees. Because as I said earlier, there are too many places these days where the employees are using internet very commonly and often for purposes which are non-work related, and that can lead to internet addiction. So one important thing is educating employees on the factors that contribute to internet addiction. So, I mean, they need much input on 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the factors that can lead to internet addiction, and you need to be watchful on if any of these factors apply to you, one or more of these. And teaching detect the first signs of internet addiction. Like what are the red flag signs? I mean, do you start using internet at places when you're not supposed to use it for your own entertainment purposes, or do you have something that is called ringxiety? Ringxiety is one of those that new lingo that has come up with the screens. That with every small ping or every small sound of notification, the person just reaches for the cell phone when he should be doing something else. He should be working in the place. So, those kind of red flag signs, they need to be told that if you have any of these, then be watchful. You could be heading towards internet addiction. And the third part, what are the program characteristics? If I am to implement a program, some broad ideas about what kind of programs can these be. There is something called single versus complex interactions. Single interactions are when you attack a single type of risk behavior. For example, I think this is something that we do in our clinics, like a patient comes with porn addiction, or a patient comes with shopping addiction, or stock market addiction, and then you do your own things, treatments for that particular problem. So that's a single intervention aimed towards a single pathology. Complex interventions are those that target multiple areas. For example, different types of risk behaviors simultaneously in a given person. Different types of environments that are relevant to internet addiction, like family, peers, school, work, community. Just now, to give you an example, I was recently called by one of the root in Nagpur, and they were sharing their thoughts with me. So we want to help students with internet addiction. How should we go about it? For example, this Rotary Club, to really be helpful, needs to be comprehensive. It needs to talk to the parents of children. It needs to talk to the school authorities, the teachers. It needs to talk to the children themselves. It needs to spread awareness in the community. So, if Rotary Club does many of these things, then that's kind of complex intervention. And thirdly, you target not only internet addiction, but you target other difficulties, other high-risk behaviors like substance use also. Because we know that for various types of addictions, whether it's sex addiction or substance use addiction, internet addiction, or whatever, the underlying pathology, the underlying neurophysiology, the underlying neurotransmitter difficulties, they are kind of same. They are connected to dopamines, and they are connected to specific pathways in the brain, and so on. So, if you are targeting one kind of internet addiction, then you also need to target the associated addictions that the person could be having. So, you are helping the person as a whole individual. Coming to one of the last points, the policy level interventions. Now, this is something very important. If we need to prevent cyber psychiatric disorders, then merely talking to the community will not help. but all the stakeholders, and stakeholders include people from top down. I mean, right from policymakers. We need to apprise the political leaders about this. We need to apprise the various departments in the cabinets, the high functionaries in the government. Some examples. China, for example, has done this very innovative task. I mean, some of the things that they have started enforcing in their country. I mean, we know the way things are enforced in China. I mean, a very strong-handed hammer for some people with certain rules. So that is something that happens there. And in China, there are no internet cafes within 200 meters of the school. Now, that's the policy this year, that you cannot have a cafe. The business hours of internet cafes will only be between 8 p.m. and 12 p.m. 12 midnight. I mean, no school-going or college-going kid can use this cafe bunking the school or college. So the timings are restricted, and you can't go beyond 12. So that I mean, the naturally automatically the number of hours that you use these are reduced. Then some companies in some countries have been forced to include something called fatigue system. I found this very interesting. A fatigue system in, for example, a game, online game, is a system by which the game starts losing power over time. So the longer a child goes on playing the game, more are the chances of his failing. I mean, that's inbuilt in the game. So, I mean, that automatically discourages the young person from continuing to use it for long. Then another example is imposing corporate social responsibility on online gambling companies. So, I mean, these online gambling companies in some countries are forced, I mean, it's by law that they have to do research on what kind of game design can be brought out and decrease the level of engagement with the game, and which can basically prevent addiction. Now, very briefly, if you look at the differences between treatment paradigms and the prevention in cybersecurity illnesses, one can look at three areas, like what is the target population. For treatment, these are patients. So somebody comes to you with shopping addiction and you treat that person. But for prevention, it is society at large. So, I mean, we can see that the aim of prevention is rather too ambitious. I mean, we want to deal with the entire society because, I mean, every individual today, a hyper-connected society needs to know the various aspects of the dangers of the internet use in a wrong way. Secondly, who are the personnel responsible? For treatment, it is largely mental health professionals. I mean, the clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist is the one who is going to treat these people. But for prevention, as I mentioned earlier, it is a top-down thing from the policy maker. So right from the policymaker to the parent to the teacher and everyone in between. So these are people involved in prevention. And thirdly, the focus in treatment is a pathology, but focus in prevention is improving overall adaptive function. Because unless the overall functioning improves, the predisposition for, say, internet addiction, it continues. I mean, if you don't teach the person to cope better with emotional difficulties, if you don't teach the person to cope better with, any kind of emotional issues that arise, you cannot prevent internet-related problems. So, if you look at the right-hand side of the right most column of this figure, you can easily see that it's a very ambitious thing. And no single person or no single organization can do it. But I mean, at so many levels, so many people in the society, they can be and should be involved in preventing cybersecurity problems. So at the end, concluding just a few remarks. Literature on research in prevention of internet addiction is scarce. We know that the internet is a new phenomenon. There are not too many papers. Papers are coming out. Research is being carried out, but then certainly not enough to draw generalized conclusions. There's an urgent need to implement new interventions for different at-risk populations. So we need to devise interventions so that we can prevent, conduct good research on the effectiveness of these interventions. So once you devise an intervention, it's not enough to devise it, but also to conduct research. Is it effective? Is it not? If not, what is it that's not helping? So how can we modify that intervention, studying that further, and so on. It's a rather lengthy, laborious process. And lastly, preventive intervention should not only target children and adolescents at risk, but also parents, teachers, peers, and others who are part of the formative environment. So anybody who affects a young person, especially a child, an adolescent, I mean, anybody who can influence. It can be a parent, it can be a teacher, it can be society at large, it can be social media, and so on. I think they are the ones who need to be largely targeted for preventing cybersecurity problems. Right. So with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you so much for the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhavesh sir. Over to you, chairpersons, for introduction of next speaker.
Prasad?
Yeah. I hear it. I agree. All right. That was a very comprehensive approach to prevention of something that is rife among all sections of society. Why only children and adolescents? I think all of us, including the caregivers and the mental health professionals, are also targets, if you ask me, when it comes to internet addiction or the use of media. I think that was a very comprehensive approach. That's great. And we have another speaker, Dr. Shahul Amin. Well, he's got an impressive CV. He's done his MD from CIP, and he's currently consultant psychiatrist in Changanacheri in Kerala. He's, in fact, the editor of the Indian Journal of Psychological Medicine and the co-editor of the book, A Primer of Research, Publication, and Presentation. I think he's very active in the approach to presenting papers and how do you go about various research projects. He's a past editor of Kerala Journal of Psychiatry. He wrote more than 200 mental health articles in Malayalam periodicals. That's very commendable. 62 publications, 820 citations, and an H index of 9 according to Google Scholar. And that's very impressive. He's the academic, if you can call it that. His wrote at one time, which was considered the Bible of symptomatology. And he was awarded the Certificate of Excellence for the best case presentation at the annual National Conference of Indian Association of Private Psychiatry in 2013. He's a direct council member of the IPS. Over to you, Dr. Shahul Amin.
Thanks. Let me share my screen. Okay. Good evening, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank the Buzz Zone for this opportunity, for giving me this opportunity to be a speaker along with a giant like Sudhir Bhavesh sir. And thanks, Prasad sir, for the kind introduction. So all of us use various media, not only the digital media, even the other conventional media also, mainly for three purposes. Like, we use especially media like say Facebook or WhatsApp, email, etc. to communicate with our patients. Then to maintain an image in the sense that we want to communicate to the society at large and our colleagues that we are people who are experts in some field. We have our own good informed opinions about various matters, etc. And also, if there is any like accusations against us, we want to counter that. All this is also one of the purposes. Then many of us use this media to create awareness among the public about various mental health issues and psychiatric problems. So these are the various purposes. So against this background, my presentation will be covering the following aspects. One is what care we should take, as Abhijit was saying in the beginning, when we are using communication through email or WhatsApp. Then when we are using the social media, like what all precautions we should take. Then if you are preparing videos, maybe for Reels or YouTube or other presentations, then what all care we should take. When we are writing for print media, when we are preparing a presentation for the radio, and how we should proceed about creating websites for our departments or clinics or hospitals, etc., etc. And also, especially, this is a huge issue now. Like any of your patients who have any a disgruntlement against you, they immediately proceed to Google to give you a bad review and all. So how to respond to that? And finally, very briefly about advertising, that is mainly based on the AMCI, NMC guidelines. So starting with the email, though it is about email, most of this information also applies to the WhatsApp communication also. What the experts recommend is that, especially if you decide to communicate with any patient through WhatsApp or email, it is better to have a prior informed consent. That is very important, so that later you do not end up in the legal suit. We have some sample forms. You can download it from this site, moodychild.com. They have a very good template. Basically, it says about various things like there can be technical failures. It is possible that we do not access your message. We cannot ensure your confidentiality because of the inherent technical limitations of this kind of media. So a lot of those kinds of points are there only after the patient signs, like before a surgery or an ECT and all. Like only after that one engages in email or even WhatsApp communication with the patient. That is what is ideal, especially from a legal perspective. One information that you should give the patients is how much time you may take. All of us are busy with our clinics and other things. So in how much time you can usually expect a reply from us. That kind of information can be given beforehand or included in that consent form. And also you can configure automatic reply, especially if you are using a specific email address for your professional communications with patients, or if you have a WhatsApp business account. All of you know that you can have an automatic reply, which should have certain kind of information. Like for example, again, as I told, how frequently do you check the medium? Then how frequently you provide replies to these communications, and that again, that there is a risk to confidentiality. And also that in case of an emergency, one should not be using a medium like this, a WhatsApp communication or an email. Rather, you can give a phone number that they can use to reach you in case of any emergency. So this kind of an automatic reply can go to the patient who is sending you a message through email or WhatsApp. Then one thing you should take care of is, because though you may think that it is a patient who is writing to you, it may be somebody else. Because suppose Dr. Sudhir Bhave has an address, sudhir.bhave@gmail.com, but somebody else can create Dr. Sudhir Bhave@gmail.com, and if you receive an email, you may think that this is the real person. But like that, people may create false email addresses to gather information from you, maybe for a divorce or for maybe for other legal purposes and all. And you may be duped into thinking that this is the patient actually. So you should always counter check. You should have the patient's email address in your records. And when you receive an email or even a WhatsApp communication, you should check and ensure that this is indeed the patient who is communicating to you with this name. And you should also say that when you're sending the reply, you ask the patient to acknowledge. Usually we Indians do not do that. You may see a message, okay, our purpose is done, we carry on. But if you ask for an acknowledgement, you can be sure that the patient has seen your message, and there are chances that the person will implement your suggestions and also always request an acknowledgement. And this is also important, be it a WhatsApp communication, be it an email communication. After that, you take a printout and keep in the file, so that if your laptop, if your email account gets hacked, or if your WhatsApp data is lost, you will have no access to this. Or maybe if it is a group setting, suppose sometime the next time some other colleague is seeing the patient, or you leave the center and another colleague joins and that patient is seen by that particular person. In all these instances, they will need the information, what communication has happened outside of the hospital records. So for that purposes, all these kind of important communications, you should ideally take a printout and keep in the patient's file to make the communication easier and complete. And in your replies, you should be very careful. You should not write anything that sounds angry or sarcastic, because the thing is, in like email, WhatsApp and all, there is no non-verbal communication involved. It is only the text. So the patient, especially psychiatric patients, with all their deficits, they may not realize that you are joking or you are being sarcastic and all. They may take it literally and they may feel offended and all. So this care you should take. And suppose you feel that there are a lot of exchange going on. You are sending a message, the patient is sending a reply, you are sending again a reply, the patient is again sending a reply. That is an indication that this medium is not sufficient. So you ask the patient to come for a direct consultation or ask them at least for a telephonic consultation so that the issue can be solved rather than a lot of time lapsing between consecutive messages. Another issue is be it email or be it your WhatsApp with your phone. Many of us share our devices with our family members, right? So suppose the patient's message come and the device is with your daughter or son or spouse and the person also gets to see the messages. That affects the confidentiality. So that care you should take. Maybe you password protect your email app or you keep your email account logged out of the system, or you tell your family specifically to not look at this kind of apps or accounts so that the patient's information is not leaked and all. This is another area where we should be taking care of. Now coming to the social media. In social media, one major issue is that all of us have two kind of faces there. One is we have our brothers, our extended family, our old classmates, our neighbors, etc., etc. On the other hand, we have our professional relations, also our colleagues, our students, our teachers, etc., etc. So how to cut a balance between these? This has been a dilemma ever since the professionals started using these media. And also many say Google Buzz had that feature to have separate streams for different groups, but anyway they stopped. So this is one issue that many people face, whether if I post something, whether this will be liked by my family or whether this will be understood by my colleagues and all. But what the experts say is the question is not whether to ponder about what you are posting is personal or professional. Whatever you are posting, the primary concern should be whether this is appropriate for a public space. Social media is a public space, and not only that, unlike in say offline real life interactions, whatever you post in a digital medium, you cannot take it back. Even if you deleted that within seconds, people may have taken screenshots and they may spread that. So you should be very careful that this is a public space. You are a professional. So be it your professional colleagues, be it your relatives and other neighbors and all, be sure that this is something that nobody will find fault with. That kind of posts only you should be making. And you should also think about the legal aspects. For example, MSCA clearly says that one should not publish the photos of patients and all. That is clear there. And also we have our IT Act, where about child pornography, about financial frauds, and lots of clauses are there. So one should be aware of all this. One is using social media and other related aspects. And also another thing one should remember is one should not especially because there is a lot of public, those who are not psychiatrists, those who are from other specialists, those who are lay people there seeing your posts. Even if you have something against psychiatric organizations or psychiatry as a specialty as such, it is better to not drag that into a public arena. Better discuss that with your colleagues inside closed doors, because so that already there's a lot of stigma and all associated with psychiatry. I will give an example from my own past actually. In 2015, we had these ANSIPs in Hyderabad. I was 8 years younger, so maybe my PFC was not that mature. So there I saw that in a psychiatrist conference, they have a smoking zone. I felt offended, like why psychiatrists should be smoking and all. Initially, Nandu sir was saying about that, I think, though I did not follow the language properly. So I felt like taking a photo and putting it in Facebook. Now, in retrospect, I feel that that was bad. I should not have done that. Even if I had any grievances about it, I should have taken it up internally with IPS and with my senior fellow psychiatrists. So obviously posts like these that show the profession in a bad light, all these kind of posts are better avoided in social media. Now this is one form that we sign when we take our registration with the medical council. And one of the items say that I will treat my colleagues with all respect and dignity. This applies to social media also. So if you are any grievances against any of your colleagues, you don't take it to the public sphere of Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or something. you deal it at a personal level, because this respect and dignity to colleagues, that MCA clause, that applies to social media also, and this can be used against you if there is a complaint to the medical council about that. Now, I told about creating awareness. When you are doing that, you should make sure that you should share information from credible sources only. Journal articles, textbook, and all, not any website, any article written by any lay people. And you can give your personal opinions. All of us may have opinions that may differ from that of core psychiatry, be it some of the clauses of MSc like advanced directive, be it homosexuality, whatever. But when you are presenting that in a social media, say that this is not the opinion of the mainstream psychiatry, this is my personal opinion, so that the public does not get confused. And if somebody points out that what you have told is wrong, inaccurate, like be courteous enough to correct that or remove that inaccurate information. Don't let that stay in the cybersphere eternally in your name. This particular clause I saw in the American Medical Association Code of Ethics. I was not able to spot that in any Indian guidelines, but that is very important because I have seen many, even senior psychiatrists, repeatedly making this error. What it says is, one should not make public comments about diagnosis about people, public officials, celebrities, persons in the news, those whom you have not had the opportunity to personally examine. Like some years ago, there was a controversy when many American psychiatrists said that Donald Trump has mental illness and all. And even in Indian TV, we have seen some psychiatrists analyzing the body language of Saurav Ganguly or another player on the ground and saying that this is what he is feeling. Unless the person has asked you for an assessment, you are not already to get into people's lives, even if they are public figures, and make share your impressions of their psychiatric illness status or even their psychology publicly. And also confidentiality of your patients, as I already told, is very important here. Whenever you are sharing any information about patients in any social media, you should de-identify. Nobody should be able to identify the patient. You change the sex, you change the age, the place, some of the description of the history, etc., etc. And don't discuss like management aspects in a public place, especially when you are not very sure that even in a group all the members are not psychiatrists. In such cases, you should not discuss any case because that may lead to confidentiality issues. And especially those who are senior, because all of you may be aware of this, but those who are working under you, even the nurses, the attenders, everybody, you should sensitize about these aspects, that the patient's identity should never be revealed under any circumstances, especially through social media. And again, as Abhijit was saying, you may get friend requests from people who are under your care. Or maybe you may feel like sending a friend request to some of your patients. This is a big no. Because as in the big old forensic medicine, we studied that therapeutic relationship, the boundaries. This kind of social media befriending actually is against that watertight therapeutic boundary that you have to keep with your patients. At the same time, in psychiatry, the patients may be a bit sensitive. They send you a friend request and you refuse to accept that. They may be upset and all. So when the patient comes for the follow-up, next time you discuss that, why you cannot do that, why it is against medical ethics, etc., so that they do not feel upset about that. Another issue that can happen is you may get messages, be it WhatsApp, be it email, from people who are not under your care. They may have some clinical doubts to ask you and all. You can give some generic advice. This may be the these are the possibilities, something like that. But never suggest this is the diagnosis or this is the treatment. Once you do that, the therapeutic relationship is established, or with all the attendant legal consequences if something goes wrong. So never try to do that. Now, if you're shooting videos, be it for YouTube, be it for an online class, or be it for any reels, etc., there are some precautions. Many of this is common sense. I will just summarize them, especially for the younger members here. Obviously, you should wear an appropriate attire because you are going to make a professional speech. And sorry. There's something wrong with my slide. I'm sorry. Just I will reshare. I'm sorry. There is something wrong here.
That's okay, Dr. Shahul. You are speaking wonderfully. You can quote your experiences and go on with the speech.
Okay, okay, sir. Just give me a minute, sir. Just 1 minute. Something.
Maybe some slides may be missed or something.
This is. The entire system has gone haywire. Nothing is working.
That's okay. You can.
Okay. I will, but I have to see my slides at least, sir. Just give me a minute.
You can just share your experiences about media.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
No problem.
Okay, sir. So we were talking about the appearing in the videos. So basically, one is one should wear an appropriate attire, as I already told. Then carry a smile, because one should not be too serious when one is making a presentation. That is one thing. Then also one should not forget to look at the camera. That is one problem that very times happen. Even when somebody is presenting a webinar also, people may feel like they may be looking somewhere else. They may be just reading the slide, not looking at the camera without the eye contact. In psychiatry, all of us know about the importance of eye contact and all properly. And also, if there is an interview format, what you should do is the way you do in a court of law. Like when the question, person is the interviewer asking you a question, you look at the person. Then when you are giving the answer, you look at the camera. That is how it should proceed when you are working. You are just a minute. I hope this is visible now. I hope
sir,
this is
visible.
okay. Then also, like in especially when you are live television and all that, the seconds are very precious. All of you know how much it costs for a 2-second ad and all. So be always very precise. Speak to the point. Don't keep repeating the points again and again. And depending on the audience that you're expecting, whether it is an Instagram reel, whether it is a YouTube video, whether it is a TV channel, so you customize your information, the depth and breadth of the information, depending on the audience that you are expecting. And as I told for the other media also, always convey scientific information only, not just your personal opinions and experiences. Be it evidence-based as much as possible. Now, when you are writing about the print media, many people make the error that, like, suppose you are asked to write about, say, genetics of alcoholism or the psychiatric aspects of diabetes. Many of us write in a manner that we would write an essay in an MD exam. And such a format will never be liked by the public. The public may not even fully read what you have written. So some of the techniques include, like, you should make it as clear as possible. You should improve the clarity of writing. So for that, some of the techniques include using some metaphors. Like, for example, you are talking about iron gated channels and all, then you can say that it looks like a gate to your home. These kind of metaphors you can use. Then you can use a lot of examples. Whatever concept you are describing, you can use some examples to explain that. And even if you are asked to write an article, it is not necessary that you use only the text. You can use some images. You can make some diagrams of your own. or you can even take some good resolution photographs from the internet. It is not usually copyrighted, or it is not that huge an issue, provided you provide the acknowledgement. This is taken from such a journal, this is taken from such a website. If you provide the acknowledgement, even you can use images so that the ideas are conveyed better. And as always, when you are talking to the public, all these technical terms, like it is very difficult for the public to digest all that. So limit jargon as much as possible. If you are using jargon, you explain it as much as possible using examples. And whenever you are mentioning a jargon, you in those places specifically, you use shorter sentences, simpler language, and all. In other places, maybe you can go for some flowery language, but where the people have to understand the jargon, there you should go slightly like slower on the flowery part. You should give more importance to the person understanding that. And as much as possible, you use short words and sentences in whatever you are writing for the general public. And also to make it interesting for the readers, for the general public, whatever you are writing about the mental health, you can use some quotations. Suppose you are writing about love or violence or suicide or depression. Whatever you do in our Google search, you will get some very good quotations from poets, from writers, novelists, and also you can use some of them to make the points interesting to the readers. You can use proverbs from your own local language. You can use some of your clinical experiences. Along with that, you can use some humor. Even you can search Google Images for cartoons. You can use some you can mention that this is from such a website and all, but using humor also increases the people's interest. And suppose another issue that you get is, especially from newspapers, there is some suicide, some murder, some alcoholism related issues and all. They may give you a call and they will need an immediate response. Usually it is okay because most of the cases you will be an expert, but there may be scenarios where you may not be that updated. Maybe they are asking you about artificial intelligence, something like that. In that case, don't do that. Don't give an immediate reply. You ask them to wait. You give me 10-15 minutes. I will get back to you, and you call them back. That is better than having some erroneous information printed in your name in the next day's newspaper. Talking in the radio, again, very brief I will be. One should know one's listener, though it is not easy to guess what kind of listeners you are going to get, what kind of people are going to listen to you, but at least some approximate guess, people with at least some education, who have at least some interest in the topic that you are going to speak about, those who will be able to understand if you explain it in a lucid manner. So that kind of a stereotypical person you should have in your mind, and you should be speaking to that person. Because when you are speaking, if you think that some school students will be listening to me, some professors will be listening to me, and you want to address both the groups, it is not going to be easy. So you have one person, you speak to that person, that way you will be clear and coherent. And even if you are like fatigued and all, you should keep your voice energetic without getting very forceful, because in radio, if that energy in the voice is not there, people may change the channel. And you should always remember, when you are in a radio studio, like the mic is very strong. It will pick whatever movement, even if you are clearing your throat or sneezing, everything, especially if it is a live program. Otherwise, they may edit some of the portions out. So you should be very careful about what all voices you are making. And you should not think that I am on the radio, I should sound like an expert. So you should not try to act like an expert. Be yourself, be natural. That way your real self will be conveyed to your listeners. This is one thing that I wanted to tell, because many times it is panel discussion and all, but at times it is like writing for the print media only. They will give you a topic and they will tell you that you talk to us about 15 minutes about a topic. So what I did was, in this case, you can see there are various double asterisks here. I made that because in those spaces, I want a brief pause. That way, I will not be too fast and the people will be able to get the point. So there is no pause in between every words. But I feel that if a pause is there, it will be more legible to the audience. That way, I have made the asterisks there. And also some of the important words I have put in bold, so that when I am talking, I can give more emphasis to that. So you can prepare like this, so that when you are reading that, that flow is not lost. And also, especially in Microsoft Word and other tools, now there is an option that whatever you have typed, it will read it out to you. Like if you go to that review button and then that read aloud button, if you click, it will read it out to you. So then if you listen to this voice, it is speaking whatever you have to type, you will know whether it flows when you are speaking, whether it flows naturally or whether it is not does not have a natural rhythm and all. Then you can rearrange the text, modify the text accordingly. So this is one useful tool, especially when you are preparing for the radio. About the websites, this is one important agency, phone Health on the Net, that has given various guidelines for people who make professional websites. Some of the major recommendations include, again, as I told before, the information must be authoritative, and you should mention that this advice is not meant to replace advice of health professional. Nobody should be taking medicines on their own simply by reading advice on a website. This is only for information purpose. And privacy policy, that is very important, especially in psychiatry. Suppose a patient stores cookies in their system, or somebody registers for a newsletter and or gives you their email address. How you are going to use all this information, you should be upfront about that. And in every article, especially if it is about management, diagnosis and all pages should have when it was created and when it was last modified, so that the person can know like how updated, how new the information is. I will skip this because we are running short of time. And this should not happen. This I saw in a website of a de-addiction center. Actually, I masked those faces. They had done some competition and all the photos of the patients were there. One should never do this. One should always de-identify, especially in photographs. It is as much as possible, it is better to avoid putting photographs of patients in your websites. Negative Google reviews, again, they will come. There can be two groups of people. One is those who have some genuine grievance. Indeed, some error has happened from your side. So how to respond to that? Respond to them and do it as early as possible. Thank them for their feedback. And if you feel that you have made some error, you can apologize there and have some sympathy for the person, rather than getting angry at them for dragging you or for humiliating you publicly. And as much as possible, you offer an explanation. For example, some patients can have side effects like this because of their genetic makeup. That kind of explanation you can give. And don't give a typical response to everyone, because those who are reading your page, they will see the response you give to all other like people who have made the post. So if you have a very copy paste response, people will lose faith in you. Don't do that. And don't get personal. And as much as possible, don't continue the discussion there. You give them a phone number and ask them to call you there, so that like the rest of the discussion is outside the public view. That is better, especially for you and also even for the patient, because of the confidentiality issues. And some people ask them to delete. You don't keep the review there, you delete it. Don't do that, because if they don't delete it, your message will remain there and it will be seen by your other prospective customers, which may not be good for you. And so indeed, if there has been some error, you can offer some compensation also there, which will improve the people's faith in you. I will skip this one. Finally, about advertising in various media. All of you know about now, anyway, all the controversy is over. We are back to the 2002 Act with its amendments. So it has a clear section on how much advertising health professionals can do. Some of the major points include that one should not directly or indirectly solicit patients. So this kind of advertisement, no RMP should be doing. And one should not invite attention to your own, especially this is important for social media, your professional position, skills, qualification, achievements, appointments, etc. You can do that, but you should not do that in a manner as of it is a self-aggrandizement. You are superior to your colleagues. That kind of manner, you should not present this kind of information. That's all. Thank you. Sorry for that technical glitch that we had in. Thank you.
Wow, a good talk.
Yes, that was a very good talk, and I feel that this is a very comprehensive and good strategic discussion that the organizers have arranged, because Dr. Bhave talked on the misuse of media and Dr. Shahul Amin talked on the proper use of media. So this was a focus from two sides on the media, because one thing is very clear: we cannot run away from media. We have to prevent misuse and we have to inculcate proper use. everybody has to use media. Even now we are talking about de-addiction of media on media itself. So media is a weapon both ways. Dudhari talwar hai wo. So I think it was a very good discussion because as I said, Dr. Bhave, Dr. Shahul Amin talked on the proper use, Dr. Bhave talked on the misuse. One thing before it's open for questioning is that while Dr. Sudhir Bhave was talking, I thought that it's on the same lines as any addictive or dependency causing substances, media itself. So he was talking on certain personalities which are prone for media addiction. So why not classify media addiction on the same lines as alcoholism, primary and secondary? People who are attracted to media without any cause, and people who are attracted to media because of neglect from parents, their own personality problems, etc. So that will facilitate treatment strategies. Dr. Prasad, you have any observations?
मैम का नेक्स्ट सुनिए
मैम का नहीं
Well, I think
चलो
you have
लोगों
put it
का
very succinctly, sir,
unfortunately
as a sense as regards the use and abuse. But what was also interesting was the kind of professional etiquette that
internet
we
or
need to be
media
following
psychiatric
when communicating on
setups में कैसे यूज करना
any
चाहिए साइकियाट्रिस्ट
platform,
को इंटरनेट और
be
मीडिया
it
कैसे यूज
an
करना
email
चाहिए
or
रिस्पॉन्सिबली कुछ
even
डालना
an
नहीं चाहिए
SMS.
मतलब तुम वीडियो
Because
डाल
I
रहे हो
think we need to
करेक्ट
remember this,
सोर्सेस को
that
पुट
any
करो
printed
अपने
word
मन
is
से कुछ मत
permanent,
बोलो
which can be
और
used and abused by the receiver. So that needs to be absolutely drilled into our heads, because we probably off the cuff would be tempted to, send off a message or something like that. Now, with its time and with its background, it's there for posterity, irrespective of the fact you may delete it or whatever. It is still very much there, and it can be retrieved at a later date, and which can be, used for whatever reasons known to the patient, especially in the case of, let's say, a paranoid patient who could probably be collecting data of all sorts and use it in when he is in his delusional peak. So I think we need to remember that. So yes, professional etiquette in both the kind of language that is used and the use of various similes, metaphors, and other things at some point could be even taken literally, specifically because of their inability to, understand the abstract meaning of the statements that we could make. So it has to be probably very simple, straightforward, direct, clear, as Dr. Amin pointed out. Regarding Dr. Bhave's talk, it's very interesting in the sense we're talking about a primary prevention kind of a thing and a secondary prevention kind of a thing, wherein there are various aspects, and he very rightly pointed out that the target groups not as popularly known as only the children and adolescents. बच्चा मोबाइल पे अटक गया है is not just what's happening. It is the entire family today which is hooked onto the net. And Messrs. Mark and whoever else is responsible for it, I have made it so addicting even further with all those reels and with all those enticing videos and whatnot. Just apart from the gaming sites, it's getting more and more difficult to get away from it. And this possibly is attacking all ages, including retired people, including people who are still in their formative years, the entire gamut of the population. So it was a wonderful topic both ways. I think we should open it up for the questions and discussions. There were some interesting questions coming up. So if our moderators could take it up, great.
There are few questions like Dr. Umesh Nagapurkar sir has asked how to give information to a press reporter on telephone.
Interesting.
Many times they ask about sensitive issues. So how to immediately deliver these things?
I mentioned that earlier. Like one thing is, if you are not very sure, if you are not very updated, you can, though they may urge for an immediate response, you can ask for some time. You can organize your thoughts. You can collect the latest data, and after that you can respond. One thing is you record the conversation, because many times people have been misquoted. Like you say something, they print something else, then they say that you said this. So you print, you always try to record the code. And another thing is never give, as I told, never give a comment about a particular case. Like there is one suicide. So you don't say that he died because of his alcoholism or he died because of his depression and all. You don't say that. If it is a suicide, you can say that people usually die of suicide because of such and such reasons. These are the symptoms of depression that you should be looking for. Only that kind of comment you can give. You cannot comment about any person whom you have not examined or who have not come to you for opinion. That you should not do on the media. Only general, this is usually what happens. This is what we usually see. That kind of a comment would be more healthy and ethical.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
Thank
valid
you.
point. Hmm.
Yeah. There's one more question by Dr. Dhananjay Ashturkar. It says how to manage those patients who keep on asking, communicating, as well as nagging, not an emergency, but on WhatsApp or Facebook messengers.
No, I think the right approach would be you tell them that I am a busy person and I do not have, and it is unethical to be like, especially if it is a patient, to interact in such a chit chat with the patient. So, please stop this. And if they don't stop this, you can obviously block the person. Other than that, I am not aware of any guidelines. You don't have to let them cross the boundary also. The boundary violations, it is the responsibility of both, not just the professional. Patients also should respect your boundaries.
Yeah,
Bhave sir, I think, yeah, sir.
I would like to add something to Dr. Shaul. What I commonly do is, there are patients. They ask one question, and if it's a simple one-line answer, there is no problem. I would generally reply. But then sometimes the patient lists a large number of problems, and then he wants to respond, and maybe back and forth. So in such a case, I simply write one line that please call so and so. That is my clinic number for further discussion, and I end it there. Because on a telephonic discussion, the back and forth is cut down, and maybe over 2-3 minutes you can have the entire communication. So shifting to telephonic communication from back and forth online communication or media communication. I think that's one thing that we can do.
Yeah. One more question for Dr. Shahul, sir. You mentioned about mentioning apologies on a Google review, sir. So does that not equate to accepting our shortcomings or confessing that we have been wrong, so that sometimes these patients may use it in a court of law?
No, I'm not saying about, say, patient death or serious issues like that. Maybe somebody saying that the waiting time was too long, or the medicine in the pharmacy, they were charging slightly more, things like that. Maybe there was some error from the pharmacist. No, not about that the kind of mistakes that would come under the criminal or very serious kind of faults. That is there. That point is valid. But I am talking about in such cases, they won't be going to Google review. They would be going to police, and they would be going to the medical council and human rights commission, etc., etc. Google reviews, it is usually about small things. So for example, they came with an outside prescription to your hospital and the pharmacy did not give that. So things like that. They are usually petty issues in that come in Google reviews.
Okay. Thank you, sir. There's a question for Dr. Sudhir Bhave, sir. You said about learning or empowering about specific skills, but many a times when it comes to children, and we also often encounter parents with high expressed emotions. So how to teach such parents those skills? Number one. Number two, at times parents also feel little proud when their child is using mobile and using it even in a more smarter way than them. So how to address these issues, sir?
See, about the first thing, when parents are using expressed emotions, I think now whenever we talk to parents, the first thing is that we ask the child or the adolescent to sit outside and not we listen to the communication going on. And I think the straightforward thing would be to discuss with the parents about the kind of communication that helps and the kind that does not help. You can specify that if you use, say, these kind of sentences, then what's the likely harm? Not just saying that don't say this, but also give them the reason Like if you criticize, we have those dictums like criticize the deed and not the child, praise the deed and not the child. So giving them these basic guidelines, explaining to them and the reason why. So I think that basically forms the bedrock of how to counsel on express emotions. And about your second thing about parents feeling pride in children using the cell phone. I think the parents need to be told that the next generation is going to be smarter than the parental generation when using the smartphones. And it's a very common thing. It's not very unusual for a child to use a cell phone in a way better than yours. But at the same time, it has its own risks. These are the risks that are involved. And you as parents are kind of responsible to see that these kind of things don't happen. Because what is seeming like a very smart use could tomorrow turn out into more difficult areas. So fine, be happy with that he's smart enough to use the cell phone, but then be aware of the dangers. These are the dangers, and this is what you need to do about the potential dangers.
Yes. Thank you, Bhavesh sir. Sir, Google has a safe search option in its search engine. So it can prevent certain kind of content from viewing. Can we expect Google to have safe search in terms of times for mobile? Should we expect this?
You might be aware that there are many apps available which help us in controlling the time for which the cell phone is being used. For example, if I'm to name a few, there's an app called Moments. There's an app called App Detox. Now, these are the apps. You have to feed the amount of time that you would like to spend on the use of the screen. Like say on the Moments, you can put that I want to use it only for 30 minutes at a time. So after 30 minutes, the app sees to it that the screen goes blank. So we do have those kind of apps that can help us in managing our time on the screen. So I'm not aware if Google, you talked of Google, I'm not sure if Google per se has any such software.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Maybe you and sir can talk to Google about this and request for the same.
Shahul, does Google have anything?
No, Google does not have. Facebook has. Facebook has an option where you can set how much time you want to spend in a day. Suppose you set 30 minutes. Once it is 30 minutes, Facebook will tell you your 30 minutes is over. Though you can continue if you want to. Google, because Google search, I don't think that is a kind of an addiction also. Nobody does Google search unless for academic purpose and all. Nobody will be repeatedly doing Google search access. So I don't think Google needs to have such a feature also. It is more for these games and social media and things like that.
Yeah, and it would not be helpful to Google itself to limit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Sudhir Bhave, sir, for such a fabulous information, especially how to identify the target groups and learning important specific skills and working at also policy level for preventing cyber psychiatric disorders. And I would like to also thank Dr. Shahul Amin, sir, for giving us a detailed do's and don'ts for using media as a psychiatrist and preventing ourselves from landing up into certain problems as well as medical legal issues. I also thank our chairpersons, Dr. Mulmule sir and Dr. BSV Prasad sir, for pre-session discussion as well as in-session discussion, fantastic discussions and giving their inputs. I thank Dr. Abhijit Pai and team for giving me opportunity to moderate this session. And I also thank Digital Psychiatry Subcommittee of IPS West Zone Branch for arranging such an interesting topic.